Hey everyone, welcome back to the Hybrid Athlete Dad podcast. In today's episode, I'm going to be going over goal setting and tracking progress as a hybrid athlete dad. Now, before we go into goal setting and tracking progress as a hybrid athlete dad, you should be familiar now if you've been listening to our episodes or if you're new to the podcast that at the beginning of each show, I like to go over some things in my personal life, what's been going on, what I've been noticing while I've been doing my training. And for those listening right now, I'm currently training to run a marathon. I'm recording this episode at the end of September. I'm scheduled to run the marathon October 13th. So I believe when this episode goes live, I will have just run the marathon. So that's currently what I'm training on. I want to give you some progress updates on that and really just how that has been going. And that's really what I like to do at the beginning of these podcast episodes is just give you some insights into my personal life being a hybrid athlete dad. And again, I say that with a grain of salt. I'm not going out there and winning Ironmans and winning these big races, doing these marathons, expecting to win. Right now, I'm just someone that likes to do 5 sessions of strength training per week and then do 5 to 6 sessions of endurance training per week, whether that's a cardio, whether that's swimming, whether that is biking. So that's really what it means to me to be that hybrid athlete dad. In the coming years, the goal is to get faster, to be competitive. But for where I am right now in my journey, is I wanted to do my first sprint triathlon. I want to do an Ironman 70.3 before hopping up to the full Ironman. I want to do a half marathon, which I had done. I'd done an Olympic triathlon, and I want to do a full marathon. And I want to complete these events. I want to go through the training blocks. I want to see what it feels like so that once I have that down and I feel more comfortable with it, then I'm going to move on to being more competitive, working on times, working on speeds, hiring a coach, before I am right now, like for this marathon, I'm just trying to complete this marathon fully running. For me, I don't want to have to stop at all while I am running for this marathon, whether that takes me 3 hours, 45 minutes, whether it takes me 4.5 hours. Right now, I'm looking at about a time of 4:20 just based on where I'm training. And I just want to make sure that I finish this marathon and I am running. Where the goal after this is okay, now that we got the marathon down, we know what the training prep is. Now we're going to move on to figure out how can we get faster with our speeds, how can we get our time down, potentially hiring a running coach. But for where I am right now at this part of the year, I'm just looking to finish these events and know that I can do them. So with that said, why I bring up the marathon aspect training of it is that I've been going through and I created my own training plan where I gradually taper off about 2 weeks before. This is actually my longest run of the week, which is going to be 20 miles come this weekend. But last week, when I had been expecting to train, I have been running 5 times a week, which is bumped up from 3 times a week because the other 2 days a week I was doing biking and swimming. And I had felt as though I'd been doing a good job doing my long runs. I had worked up to 16 miles, which is the furthest I had ever gone before. And each time I go 2 more miles. So initially I went 12, and then next weekend I had a half marathon, and then I went to 14 miles. I went to 16 miles. I recently did 18 miles. This week's going to be 20, and then I'm going to start to taper back down from there. But particularly with this past week, I had done, or the previous week, I had done 16 miles that Saturday morning, and I felt good. I felt great. Yeah, of course, I'm going to be a little sore. I'm going to be a little stiff. No matter how much stretching I do, no matter how good my hydration is, nutrition is, I find that I'm still usually a little sore after I do the runs, and then especially those long runs. When I'm doing like 5 miles right now, my body feels pretty good after that. But when I'm doing these long runs of 60 miles, 18 miles, body's definitely a little sore, and then I'll take the next day off, and then the following Monday I'll get back into running again. And I had been doing this marathon training. Like I mentioned, I did the 16 miles, and I felt really good with it. I felt, yeah, my legs were a little tired, but I got through it. And then that was on a Saturday. And that Sunday, I woke up, I was feeling I would say pretty good overall. I mean, I went grocery shopping with my wife. Then we went to a couple of farm stands. That's where we like to buy our meat. So we'll buy chicken, we'll buy hamburgers, we'll buy beef, we'll buy steaks, try out different steaks, different cuts of meats from these local farms around us that are local, pasture raised, grass fed, really good, high quality meat. And it's a lot cheaper than trying to buy online if we're buying through like Force of Nature or these other sources that are out there. It's just really nice having these farms by us. And went out and did that and felt really good overall. Didn't have any problems. And then it was about 12 o'clock. I just was feeling like pretty tired overall, but didn't really think anything of it. I know I'd run the 16 miles the day before. It was just attributing the tiredness to that, and tried to have my lunch, which was I just cooked up some grilled chicken breast and was having some rice with it for lunch, and just could only get down about half the chicken breast, and then just had to lie down on the couch. And then at that point, I started to get chills, really pretty good chills, enough where you can feel your whole body shaking. That turned into sweating, getting like a fever, feeling very hot. That turned into going upstairs, lying down, and eventually just vomiting and throwing up and all the fun parts of being sick. And what happened is our daughter, for probably like the third time for those listening, we have a 15-month-old daughter, my wife and I, and she's in daycare, and she contracted Coxsackie virus. And for those of you who are wondering, what does that mean? It's basically hands, foot, and mouth. And I believe that that's what I ended up getting was the Coxsackie virus. So that was the first day was really typical flu-like symptoms. And then I woke up the next day, so that was on Sunday. Now I'm on Monday when I'm scheduled to start running again. That was going to be happening because I got the mouth portion of the Coxsackie virus, where basically, if you ever had a canker sore, you know how painful they are. I probably had about 8 to 10 of them in the back of my throat, where usually I'll just get them on my lips or my tongue, and I'll get one at a time, and maybe within a week it'll go away. And I have some treatment that I got and put it on it, and it really helps clear it up. But when they're in the back of your throat, you can't really get to them, and it was very painful to eat or drink anything. So I ended up going to urgent care, getting tested for strep. That came back negative. Just wanted to make sure. Honestly, was kind of hoping that it was strep, just based on the fact I could take antibiotics, where there's really nothing you can take when you have Coxsackie. You really can only take, I took Tylenol just to see if that could help relieve some inflammation that I had in my throat, see if I could dull some of the pain that I had there. So now I was scheduled to run on Monday. Tuesday, really wasn't feeling that great either. And so now I progressed from having these flu-like symptoms to now I have these canker sores. And then now I'm getting these blisters. I'm getting them on my ear. I'm getting them on my nose. I'm getting them on my fingers. And luckily those only really lasted a day, and that was on Tuesday. So it was like 3 different days of having these symptoms. And that's something that I just want to talk about when you're being a hybrid athlete dad and you have a daughter or a son that's young, especially when they're in daycare. They tend to get sick a lot. And I don't think I had been sick for 4 or 5 years, even going all through college and working outside of obviously after college. Never had really been sick outside of getting migraines occasionally, and for the most part had been good. And I think I've been sick 3 times pretty good since our daughter has been in daycare, and it's just going to be inevitable. And obviously that throws a little wrench into my marathon training plans, but I realized I just have to adapt. I have to overcome, and ended up going that Wednesday. I think I did a 5-mile run that Wednesday, and then the Friday I did an 18-mile run just to get that going early in the morning. Just wanted to get that done on Friday, so that way on Saturday I could do another 5-mile run on top of it. And that was, overall I felt pretty good. But sometimes there might be things that come up, such as this, where I wake up Sunday and I'm feeling good, and I don't think that I'm going to have to adjust my marathon training. The next thing I know, I'm having to go out there and have to adjust my marathon training based on being sick, and that it hurts to even swallow water or even my own saliva per se. So that definitely didn't make it easy. So things are going to come up I'm glad that if I was going to get sick, at least it was still a few weeks out on marathon training where I was still able to get that long run in of 18 miles in before I do the 20 miler this week. So was dealing with that over the past week. Feel pretty much fully recovered. Still dealing with a little bit of a sore throat, but nothing that's anywhere near what I was dealing with before. And going along with the recovery aspect of it, and this is something that my dad had actually recommended to me, and something that I had done very few times that I can remember. But for those listening, I want to make the recommendation to take Epsom salt baths. So I buy the Epsom salt at the grocery store. It's relatively inexpensive. It's about $5 a bag, and you put, I believe it's 2 cups of Epsom salt in a bath, and you make it lukewarm or a little warm for yourself. And you sit in the bath for 20 minutes, and I can tell you what, my legs feel very fresh after I take that bath. And right now I'm doing it about twice a week, and I find that it helps get rid of some of the lactic acid that I have in my legs. And honestly, my legs have never felt better after taking the Epsom salt baths, and that's something that I wish I had been doing a lot earlier. Now, with that said, I made the mistake of putting the bath water just scorching hot because the first time I used the bath, I didn't feel as though the water was that warm. So then I made it scorching hot, and it was like 20 minutes of me sitting there and just misery, just almost like I was in a sauna, just sweating just profusely. And I had just done after I came in from a run, and the run, it was relatively hot out. And for me, I usually run early in the morning, so it's like 60 degrees in New York right now, where it was like 85 in the afternoon, so I was already very hot. And I hadn't been used to running too often in the afternoon. And then on top of that, now I have this bath that's very hot. I'm profusely sweating. I just like to read a book while I'm taking the bath, let the 20 minutes go by. And I couldn't even hold the pages because I was sweating so much. So if you're going to be taking the bath with the Epsom salt, I recommend just putting it more lukewarm and making it not too hot for you to sit there and lay in. But again, I highly recommend it. It's been very beneficial for me, and I wish I had been doing it a lot earlier. Something else that I had started to use, and I'd been on the fence about just given the cost, and I'm glad I ended up going through and purchasing it. But when I ran the half marathon, I had developed some pretty good blisters on my toes, basically on the side of my foot. And honestly, what ended up happening was I just needed more time to break in my Hokas that I had bought. I'd ran with them 6 miles on a treadmill, and then I ran the half marathon with them. They just need a little bit more time to break in, and then I don't think I get any blisters outside of the occasional blister here and there on my long runs, and it clears up relatively quick. But I had been using just regular socks, and I found some anti-blister socks online, running socks that looked very comfortable to use, and I purchased them on Amazon. You can purchase them through their website, but I liked Amazon. I could just get them quicker to my house, and hopefully I'm pronouncing the name right, but it's called Balega, Balega, and I bought the Hidden Comfort socks from them, and that was a game changer yesterday using them. They felt super comfortable running, because usually I'd been buying socks where just buy them at the store and they're like 8 socks for $8 where they get the job done. But when it comes to running, they're not typically the best socks. They're starting to rip everywhere from just putting the pressure on the socks. So I really enjoyed these socks. They were $16 a pair, but I would say that they were highly worth it in the sense that my feet felt great. I felt like I had a little extra bounce in my step from using these socks. So if you haven't checked into using running socks before, I recommend doing that as well. I think I'm going to go back and buy a few more pairs again. Given the price point, $16 a pair, obviously a little bit pricey, but I think I'm going to start using them more often when I'm doing these long runs. And similar to like my running shorts, I believe the brand is called 10,000, where they're pricey running shorts, but they're very comfortable. I really enjoy running with them, but they were like $50-$60 a pair. So I just save those running shorts to wear when I'm doing my longer runs. So like today, I'm going to be doing an 8-mile run, and then on later in the week, I'm going to be doing that 20-mile run. That's when I'll wear them. And then I have these other Under Armour shorts that you get for $10-$20 that'll run during the other days. But highly recommend those socks. If you haven't worn any running socks before, they've definitely been very beneficial. And then something that I thought was interesting for me, and not sure if this has happened to anyone, but when I run, I like to listen to music. I've tried podcasts here and there, but I find just having music in the background is very beneficial for me when I'm out there and running. And right now, I'll switch up the playlists depending on what I'm listening to, depending on, if I get bored of the same music. So right now, I've just been listening to Creed while I've been running, and I use Spotify, and I also do put it on Spotify Shuffle. So sometimes it might be Creed, sometimes it might be a different brand, but pretty similar music. And except the other day when I was listening to music while I was running, and honestly, I felt like super relaxed from listening to it. But I don't know how much I could be listening to it throughout the run. But it was playing The Fray. I don't know if anyone has listened to The Fray before, but definitely a little bit more mellow. But Spotify was playing "You Found Me" by The Fray, and it was it was definitely interesting. It was definitely a very relaxing song. I don't know if it's a song that I could really push myself too hard listening to, but it was definitely an interesting experience listening to that. And I have the phone in my pocket and I have it zippered up so that I can't get access. I mean, technically I could get access to it, but it would definitely be a little bit difficult. So I like to just keep it in my pocket. And when that song came on, I was like, well, that's definitely different. I'm trying to listen to Creed and not necessarily listen to The Fray, but nonetheless, it was still really enjoyable to listen to. And I thought that was something that was just interesting that came on within the last week or so. Now, that's some of the updates that I just wanted to give you. What's going on in my life, what's been happening, and doing this marathon training. And I would say actually one more tidbit within it, something that I've picked up on, where for me, I find that this marathon training can definitely be a grind at times. And it's one of the bigger goals that I think of that I've set for myself, because when I do the half marathon training, I think I'd already gone up to 7 or 8 miles up until that point, and making the jump from 7 to 8 to 13 it took about a month of training. But now I'm jumping from the furthest I've ever gone is 13 miles to now I'm jumping up to 26 miles, doubling how further I'm going, and that's going to be a whole new challenge within itself. It's definitely been a ton of work, basically training for this marathon. Now I'm running 5 days a week instead of 3. I'm doing these long runs I not necessarily have been doing before, and I think it's a perfect lead way into today's episode of talking about goal setting and tracking progress as a hybrid athlete dad, because this marathon was a big goal of mine and not necessarily something that I expected to do this year. And I'll get a little bit into it a little further into the episode and how it ended up coming about. But for me, there's just always been that importance of setting and tracking my goals. I pretty much have been doing that for as long as I can remember. And early on, it started when I was running my own business and when it comes to tasks in my personal life. So, to give you an example, something that might be personal for me, more on the financial side, might be I want to max out my Roth IRA this year. And then what I do is I break it down exactly how much I need to be investing per week to max it out. Another goal might be reading 20 books this year. And what I'll do is I know I have to read, it might be 12 and a half books, so say 13 books a year. I have to read one book every 2 weeks or every 12 days. And then when I'm reading a new book, say it's 300 pages, I'll open it up, I'll divide it by 12 days, and then I give myself the goal of how many pages I need to be reading per day to make sure that I'm hitting these goals. So it's always been very important for me for setting and tracking these goals, because I could say I want to read books this year, I want to invest this year, but exactly how much do I want to do? And I do this at the beginning of pretty much every single year, is I write down 8 to 10 goals that I want to hit, and then I create progress tracking sheets where I track the progress pretty much on a weekly basis. And I also track it on, I don't want to say track it, but I review it on a daily basis, so that's always in the back of my mind. And then I have my weekly tracking sheet that I update every Friday, showing how much progress that I've made in the past week. And I find that by setting these goals, it really allows me to see where I want to go, whether that's setting financial goals, whether that's setting personal goals like reading the 20 books, whether that's setting a goal such as matching 225 or doing some other type of lift in the gym. Maybe it's the goal of setting, I want to start to go to the gym 3 days a week. Maybe it's setting the goal of doing a half marathon. And then it's tracking those goals, because anyone can go out there and say, I want to run a half marathon. I want to run a marathon. But when you're tracking these goals, it just makes it that much easier to make sure that you stay on track. I don't have the paper in front of me. It's a little further out of reach, but like for my marathon training goal where I want to run a marathon, I marked down at the beginning of my training, pretty much the entire training, I wrote down what day and how many miles I have to run. And then when I'm done with that day, I cross it off. And then I go to the next day. And then when I'm done, I cross it off. And the next one, and I'm done, and I cross it off. That way I could see everything right ahead of me. So that way I can track my progress and I can see how far along I am on my goals. So I highly recommend setting and tracking your goals. It's just been very imperative for me. And I don't want you to be one of those people that, I know it's September right now, but we're coming up at the end of the year. And before we know it, it's going to be January, where you set a goal and then that's the end of it. And maybe you get really excited. Maybe you, who knows what it is. Maybe you want to pick up running. Maybe you want to go to the gym. Maybe you want to do a marathon, Ironman, whatever it may be. And you get really excited about these goals. And then 4 to 6 weeks go by. And then that's the end of it. And you stop tracking, you stop making progress. I think it can also be taken back to the point of the goals that you're setting for yourself. Obviously, you want to set high expectations for yourself, but you also want to be realistic in the sense where if I have never ran, like I just started running back in March, and my goal was to run a marathon in April, that would probably be an unrealistic goal for myself. I probably wouldn't have that confidence that I have now from putting in all the work and putting in all the training over time, where the goal became to run a half marathon once I knew I could run 6 miles. So I think you just need to be realistic with these goals, but also have these goals push you outside of your comfort zone. And then going into the goal setting, I would recommend that you have short-term goals and you have long-term goals. So a long-term goal for me, say running a marathon. The short-term goals that I have is, okay, I want to run 28 miles this week. I want to run 32 miles the next week. I want to run 36 miles the following week. So you can see how we start to progress on these goals. The goal right now I might have is doing a half Ironman in June, and then progressing from that half Ironman to doing a full Ironman, say, in August or September. But I know for the half Ironman that portion of it is running a half marathon. So I want to run a half marathon and make sure I could do that. And I check that box off. I know when it comes to running the full marathon, or when it comes to doing the Ironman, I have to run a full marathon and during it. And I'm going to check that box off in a few weeks. And so I'm slowly making progress toward these goals, where I have these short-term goals where you have your short-term goals where it's, for the marathon as an example, it's having it where I'm doing this training, again, the 28 miles, the 32 miles, the 36 miles, and then the long-term goal is the marathon. But then the marathon is a short-term goal when I'm looking at the overall Ironman that I want to run. So I think they can fluctuate between your short-term goals and the long-term goals that you set for yourself. Where the marathon is a big goal, but that's just a stepping stone as part of the goals that I'm looking to do. So I recommend setting these short-term goals and then also having these long-term goals to attack. And it's almost like you're working your way back from the long-term goals that you set for yourself. I would say when it comes to your goals, it's something that I've had to learn, but it's adjusting my goals around my family time and just making certain sacrifices. So being a hybrid athlete dad and a 15-month-old, I want to spend as much time with her as I possibly can, because during the week, she's at daycare from typically 8:30 to 4 p.m. And I get to see her obviously before daycare, after daycare, and then on the weekends. But I want to soak up as much time as possible with my daughter. But I know on Saturdays that's when I'm going to be doing my long runs. So the sacrifice that I made on Saturdays is, yeah, I want to be able to sleep in and I just want to enjoy the weekend. But I know that I want to make sure that I'm being able to spend a lot of time with my daughter. So what I would do is get up at 4:15, get out the door by 4:40, and when you're getting up at 4:40 in the morning to go out and do a run, at least where I am, the sun doesn't come up till 6:30, 6:40 right now. So there's a good hour and a half there where I'm just running in the pitch dark. And I live more in the countryside. So you're talking backcountry roads where I might not see a car for an hour when I'm first starting off my run. So it's definitely very spooky. It's definitely challenging, but I know, okay, if I leave by 4:40, I could be back by about 7:30 in the morning. And based on that, I'm gonna be home when my daughter gets home. Instead of me getting up at 6, getting out the door at 6:30, and then I'm back by, let's say, 10 a.m., which is not what I want to be. I want to make sure that I'm getting back in time to see my daughter when she gets up. And that's just sacrifices that you have to make as a hybrid athlete dad when you're pushing yourself to do these long goals, is doing it maybe when your daughter or son is asleep. Maybe it's before they wake up. And I really had to adjust my goals around my family time because I'm running this marathon. And yes, I have the support of my family, but I don't want to necessarily take advantage of that and just be going off and doing these trainings when I want to be spending time with my family. So as you're setting these goals and you're putting them together, you're going to have to be making some sacrifices. You might have to make some adjustments. Even another one that I had done is now I get up at 4:50 in the morning. I'm at the gym by 5:30 in the morning. That way I can leave by about 6:50, 6:45 in the morning. So that way I can get home by about 7 a.m. And that's around the time that our daughter is waking up each day, give or take. Sometimes she might sleep till 8, sometimes she might be up at 6:45. But on average, she's up between 7 and 7:30, where I used to get to the gym for 7:15, 7:30. Now I have to readjust my bedtime schedule, where now instead of staying up until 10:30, 11, lights out by 9:30 at the latest. So over time, as you set these goals, you just have to adjust them depending on the circumstances that you're dealing with. I would say that your goals should really make you feel uncomfortable and push you outside your comfort zone. And that's what I feel right now when I'm training for this marathon, where originally I was scheduled to run a half marathon in October, and that was going to be the first half marathon I ever ran. But it was back in August, and I felt very comfortable running. It was like 10 miles at that point. I felt very comfortable running those 10 miles. And I was like, I can do this half marathon. I knew that there was one near me. There's going to be a half marathon a week out. And I was like, I just feel as though I can do this half marathon in August. And for me, I'm like, I ended up going through and I did that half marathon. And I was like, I know that I have this I could potentially do a full marathon in October, because you could either do a half with it or you could do a full with it. I'm like, well, I just ran a half marathon. I don't want to run another half marathon. I want to run a full marathon. And then that's where I started going into and doing this training. And yeah, it's been very uncomfortable at times, where it's really the long runs where I have my bottles, I have my hydration vest, I have the gels that I'm going to be using on the run. I know mentally when I'm done with this run, it's going to be very sore and I'm not going to feel that great afterwards. Going out there and I'm going on time on my feet. Like I mentioned before, I'm expecting about a 4:20 marathon, and I'm just looking to finish the race, which means I'm going out there doing these trainings right now. I'm going out for 3.5 hours, and knowing that I have to be that long on my feet, and there's a sense of boredom that kicks in when you're going out there and running for that long. And I find that it can be very uncomfortable, but I know that I'm pushing myself outside of my comfort zone because of it. So your goals should make you feel uncomfortable, but they should also be achievable at the same point. where I know I can run this marathon, but the training that leading up to it is very uncomfortable, and I have to be okay with that. Now, the next part that I want to talk about is when you're setting these goals and you're tracking your progress. I used to use a notebook when I bring it to the gym, and I write down everything that I would do for my fitness routine. I write down what weights and lifting so I could go back the following week. And then now I switched over into using my phone, almost specifically in the gym. That way I can set, okay, I want to bench 225. That's a goal that I write up at the top. And then I'll mark down, okay, today I benched 185 for 7. I benched 195 for 5. And I benched 205 for 3. Whatever the numbers may be, okay, so now I want to get to 225. I'm doing 205 for 3. I want to be able to get to 205 for 5 before I move up to 215. And then I can start to track the progress. So I highly recommend using your phone to track your workouts, whether you're using an app. I just use the notes section on my phone. And when it came to more of those personal goals that I was going over and telling you about, I would primarily use just a piece of paper that I look at pretty much every single day. It goes over all my goals just to remind myself. And then the trackers, I just use Canva, and you can just search goal trackers on there, and I would just print them out. And then when I'm done, that one, like let's say I have 10 blocks or 10 sections on it, and I read 10 different books, and I mark it out, and then I just would go on Canva and print out a new one and go into the 11th block and print it out and just start writing from there. So I would make sure that you're just tracking everything, whether that's in a notebook or whether that's in your phone, whether that's using Canva, because I find it's really nice to go back and look at your goals, be like, oh, this goal at this point in my time in life, I was doing a half marathon. Now I'm running a marathon, or maybe I'm running a marathon now, and then now I'm running an Ironman, which is obviously a lot to it, more than just running aspect to it. So it's very important that you track your goals. I would say when it comes to tracking your goals, something that I also recommend, and it's not so much when it comes to the goal setting aspect of it, but it's journaling. And I like to journal pretty much Monday through Friday. I get a little lax on the weekends, but typically Monday through Friday, I like to journal. And I was working with a mindset coach a few years back, and what we came up with is when I'm journaling, I like to write down 3 things that I'm grateful for. So I'll say today I'm grateful for the temperature is not being as hot so I can feel more comfortable when I run. Just something simple like that. I like to do that again Monday through Friday and just keep writing that in my journal. And then I don't know if she worked at Notre Dame or how she got this, but she also would have me write why I'm playing like a champion today. And if you ever see Notre Dame, they have a sign that says play like a champion today. And I write down, I'm playing like a champion today because I'm staying on focused and I'm accomplishing all my tasks today. I'm playing like a champion today because I'm going to dominate my run that I have later today, whatever it may be. And just get into the habit of journaling. And as you start to progress, you write down the 3 things that you're grateful for. You start to write down why you're playing like a champion today. And then you start to journal some of your other ideas and thoughts that you have. And it also becomes very therapeutic getting this out of your head and onto a piece of paper. So I really recommend journaling. And then really the last piece of advice that I have when it comes to goal setting and tracking progress as a hybrid athlete dad is make sure that once you achieve a goal, whether for me it was again doing the triathlons or whether it was doing the half marathon, is make sure that you celebrate before you move on to the next goal. It's very easy to burn out when I go from running this half marathon to immediately doing this marathon training without like being like, wow, like I've never done a half marathon before, and now that I have, that's pretty cool. So you just want to make sure that you're celebrating those small wins, whether that's taking an extra day off, whether that's reassessing, maybe that's buying yourself something special, and really just being like, I put in all this extra training effort and it paid off, and I was able to accomplish this event. Just make sure you take that time to celebrate, and that way you're not burning yourself out just going from one event to the next event to the next event to the next event. Just take that time off again, whether that's a day. Just be like, wow, reflect on it, look back on it, celebrate, and then, okay, now let's move on to the next goal. We've had the time to celebrate. Now we're on to the next aspect. And that's really the last piece of advice that I would recommend when it comes to goal setting and tracking progress as a hybrid athlete dad. But I hope everyone listening has enjoyed this episode, going over everything from training for this marathon to now going through and what it looks like for me when I'm goal setting and tracking my progress as a hybrid athlete dad. In the next episode, I'm going to be going over the half marathon. I know I've talked about it a little bit before, but I want to go more in depth, how I prepped for it, the supplements that I took, the nutrition, how the race actually ran, and how it went overall. So if that's something that you're interested in, if you are someone that's running, that's training for a race, specifically a half marathon or a marathon, that's going to be an episode that you want to check out.